In this video, I want to take a look at a game which I played last weekend. I wanted to mix it up and decided to play d4 since I'm usually a e4 player. And here I played knight f3, and after knight f6, played c4. And after e6, knight c3. This is all seen before. There's tens of thousands of games in the database in this position. Knight bd7, bishop g5, e3, castles, rook c1. There's still quite a few games in this position. After h6, bishop h4, c5. Not a very common move, but there's still, I think, a couple of games. And here I took, and my opponent recaptured with the knight. According to the engine, better was to take on c4, and well, c6. The whole point is that you want to break up these two pawns, and now you recapture back. But after knight takes, well, I took, and here apparently there's a few moves that give black some chances still to stay in the game. One of them being queen b6 or queen a5, but by far the most interesting try is g5, which is very double-edged. And after d6, queen takes, bishop takes, and bishop back. Now, you could also take with the bishop instead of with the queen, but here you don't, I mean, objectively you want to just go back with the bishop, but there's something to be said about just sacrificing either with the knight or with the bishop, since the king is exposed and you haven't traded queens. So after you sacrifice, and let's just say you sacrifice the bishop and you take, and after takes, well, there's ideas of queen c2 or queen f3 to not trade queens, and you even have ideas of pushing the h-pawn. So this looks, practically speaking, very good for white, as long as there's no queen trade or something like queen a5 and knight e4. So after my opponent recapture, well, I think this is just losing a pawn. You just take on f6, and after bishop takes, you can't take with the queen, obviously, because, well, you just lost the queen. But you can take with the knight, and now, well, what do you do? Here my opponent played b6, defending the knight, but then I just take the bishop, which was threatening to take on b2. And now black has to recapture with the queen. Otherwise, if you take with the pawn, you just trade queens and you're down a pawn, and your pawn structure is terrible. So here I just played queen d4, centralizing my queen, and if we trade queens, well, then I'm happy. Queen e7 is a nice try from a practical point of view, but I mean, with the extra pawn and my queen is better, my rook is better. I don't know about the knights. I mean, is the knight really that great here? I can always kick it with b4, so maybe my knight is better. But after takes, well, then I just take with the knight, and I have no losing chances, so I'm either gonna win or it's gonna be a draw. This move I did not get. I think better is bishop b7. And after this trade, well, then I'm just winning, I think. So there's really not that much to analyze from here. We just trade, which is good for me. And here my opponent realized that he's gonna lose another pawn. And well, here I just retreat with the knight just to make sure there's no rook check. And here probably better was to play rook c1, and that way you can go anywhere along this rank and attack some of the pawns. But after rook c5, this is just terrible, because in this position you want to trade the knights, not the rooks. If you take the knights off the board, then you might survive the endgame with the rooks. But once we trade rooks, I've said this before in another video, the knights are really bad at stopping the A and H pawns. So you're down 2 pawns and you have to defend against this pawn with a knight. That sounds like it's impossible almost. So after knight b3, I was very surprised. I mean, I tell my students, if it's not forced or fantastic, then it's foolish. And why would you trade knights in this position when you're down 2 pawns? I don't know. I mean, when I saw this, I was just like, okay, well, thanks. Better was knight a4, and well, I mean, this should still be losing because it's an a pawn that's just gonna go down the board, and I have an extra pawn here on the king side as well. But it's better resistance than just taking the knight. I mean, this king and pawn endgames are not like other endgames. You're not just slightly better or slightly worse or equal. King and pawn endgames, either you're winning or it's a draw. Like, one side is winning or it's just a draw. That's it. So after king g6 and king f5, here I could move the king, but I decided not to give my opponent the chance to come try to get some counterplay after something like this, because, well, now it's still winning according to the engine, but why give my opponent hope? So I just played f3, covering all of these squares, and well, now it's just I'm winning another pawn, and you can't stop the pawns. And here I just keep the opposition, and while after king c8 I just push the pawn, and my opponent resigned because there's no way you can stop the pawn from promoting. And well, I mean, the 3 pawns here against the 4 pawns are not gonna do anything. So I thought it was a pretty clean game without any trouble. I got a good position out of the opening, being up a pawn after my opponent made a mistake, and after that my opponent just traded in positions where he probably shouldn't have traded, and went into a knight endgame which was losing, and then went into a king and pawn endgame which was even worse. So yeah, I mean, I don't know what to say other than I didn't really do anything special. I didn't really win this game so much as my opponent just lost the game. Anyway, if you like the video, please hit the like button and share and subscribe. And thank you for watching.